I don't know what our total income at that point was when I looked at the cash flow off the top of my head. Um, but I do know that we felt more and more confident. We learned a lot from each individual purchase, and we gotten a little bit of landlording experience under our belts uh, with the duplex and the fourplex, and we turned one of the homes into an Airbnb. So then we got some short term rental experience, and that was cash flowing super well at the time compared to what it would have rented for. Um, but what we realized was, hey, we want to continue doing this, and it's even with these low down payment options that we've been able to do, it still takes a decent amount of money if one of the tenants moves out, or if there was some delayed maintenance that we need to take care of now that we're the owners, or whatever. And so we needed to account for that, and it became important to us to continue looking for ways to purchase properties that we didn't have to put a large amount of money into. At that time, a 20% or 25% down payment did not seem like, maybe we could have done that with one property, but we didn't. We thought it'd be way too long to wait for the next one. So seller financing, which you mentioned earlier, is a strategy that I don't know who initially maybe opened my eyes to it, but I learned about it, read about it, listened to podcasts and read books and talked to other investors that were using it. It's a strategy for purchasing a property that I hadn't heard about, didn't know was possible, that became the way that we started looking for deals, hoping that we would not have to put as much down as a down payment if all the other terms were good. So I can talk about that more, what it is, if that's what you like.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's what you started doing from there then at that point.
Exactly.
Targeting seller
Yeah,
finance.
just looking for that. Really, we were just looking for deals. We were kind of focused on small multifamily deals in
Okay.
mobile home parks.
Got it.
The mentor of mine that I mentioned earlier, he's a mobile home park investor
Hmm.
also, which seemed pretty interesting to me and wasn't so attractive of a niche at the time, but I was kind of looking for that. So we started just cold calling when we saw a property that had 4 mailboxes. Hey, it's a fourplex. Or a little mobile home park in Fayetteville or whatever. We started calling the management number and asking for the owner's number, or looking online tax records and trying to get the owner's phone number and calling them and seeing if they would be willing to sell. We talked about the deal, and then we would always try to assess whether or not owner financing was an option.
Wow. So it was pretty manual in the beginning, just calling, just looking up opportunities and making phone calls.
Yep, exactly. That's exactly what it
I
was.
love that. I love that. That's so many people want to get so sophisticated right off the bat and say, how can I send out thousands of letters and, scale to the moon right from the start? Man, you can make, like, you're a perfect example of like making significant financial strides with, just doing the basics. And I was the same way. My wife would drive around and I'd staple, we buy houses signs up on telephone poles, and, we'd be doing it on a Friday night. And then that week you get a couple calls and all of a sudden one of them turns into an estate sale deal that, makes you tens of thousands of dollars of profit, And so, you can do these things that don't require a budget. It just require you to do something that most people aren't willing to do.
Yeah.
So,
to be honest, that's still, or I haven't really grown out of that. That's kind of what I've always done, and I never got more sophisticated when it comes to marketing or outreach than that. It was letters, it was knocking on doors, it was getting phone numbers and calling 10 phone numbers to try to get the actual owner and trying to talk to them. And it's still that.
And people will be like, how do you have this much success? And then you ask, everyone who's asking you that question, are you doing this? Are you willing to do this? And it's like, nobody is. Like that. That's just the difference. It's like, there's a book called The Compound Effect that Darren Hardy wrote. It's great book. And he says in the book, if it's simple to do, it's also simple not to do. Right. And it's those simple things that actually create the biggest impact, I think. So, very cool. So what kind of deals did you do from there then? Did you get a mobile home park and you started to get some seller finance deals?
So yes, To both of those.
Yeah.
So the next deal, which was big, and this I still consider to be kind of my unicorn deal, was through cold calling. I got a hold of a lady. She was actually retired Army that owned a 4 unit. Really, it was a 5 unit property in a nice area in Fayetteville, in North
Mm.
Carolina. She was an out of state owner, and yeah, got her on the phone, and initially, very quickly, she was not interested in talking to an investor. I'm not interested in talking to we buy ugly houses, type
Mm-hmm.
type proposition. Um, so just kept talking, kind of like, hey, yeah, I'm a young military guy. We own some properties. My wife and I are looking to buy some more, and we're just looking for other investors that may be interested in selling. And I think I seemed like a real enough person, as opposed to what she considered to be just like a company that would waste her time. And she decided to hear me out. We kind of built a relationship over a few weeks of her just kind of sharing some information about this 5 unit that she had bought years before, and hadn't really done much with it, because it had always just kind of paid its own bills and it was paid off at that point. Um,
Mm.
she shared more information on that, and she asked questions about us. And as luck would have it, or blessing or whatever, she lived in Texas, in San Antonio, and I'm from Texas. So I was traveling home for Christmas a month or so after that. And I said, hey, when I'm there, how about I come? I'll try. It's a couple hours out of the way, but I'll come introduce myself face to face, and we can see if we could talk about me purchasing this property using seller financing, which is something we had kind of talked about. I said, you own the property free and clear. She had explained to me that she wasn't looking to get rich. She was just looking to kind of get a fair price for what she paid. She didn't really even need the money. She just wanted to know she was doing well, on her sale, on her exit. So I said, hey, it might work out if you're okay accepting, as opposed to all the money from the sale. I'll give you we can negotiate a down payment, and we can talk about how long you want the loan to be, and what interest rate you want to collect the payments on. And that might help us out a lot, and it might work for your situation. And that ended up being what we did. When I went to meet her, we enjoyed talking to each other, and built some trust, and we worked out a deal where I purchased that 5 unit property for $0 down. She said, I don't even
Wow.
need a down payment. I trust you. I'm going to have my attorney look over everything, but I feel that I don't need a down payment. And I said, that's very generous. What kind of interest do you need? And she said, 1% interest. And I said, I don't think that's a realistic interest rate. At the time, interest rates were in the threes. I said, three is kind of what I would get with a bank right now. And I kind of talked her up, and we ended up on 2.5%, which was still
That's great.
incredible for me. But I just
Yeah.
I didn't think that 1% sounded right. But ended up being an incredible deal where I didn't have to bring any money down. I got 5 units, and eventually turned those all into Airbnbs. It was in a super nice
Wow.
area. They're all studio kind of apartments, and there was a great demand for that, and there still is. They still operate as 5 Airbnbs, and it's become a huge cash cow. And as you can imagine, my payment on it has not been huge because the interest rate was super low, and we worked out a good purchase price. So that was for
Wow.
me proof, hey, that seller financing can work, and you never know exactly what a seller is trying to get. It doesn't mean look and try to find a seller to take advantage of or something like that, but you just don't know what people are motivated by. And by building trust, maybe you can figure out what exactly they actually do want, and it might work out well for what you can provide.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so great. There's so many great lessons in there. And I think the reason why a lot of people don't take advantage of seller finance is because it's just so nebulous in terms of the way you can structure it. Like it's just the world is your oyster. There's not like with a VA loan or a conventional loan, it's like here's the terms that everybody gets, and you have something to go off of. But with seller finance, how for this one, since you'd never done it before, how did you determine how to structure it? Was it just kind of letting her lead the way, and then does she have a mortgage on the property? Did she? How long is that mortgage? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, so she did not have a mortgage on the property. So when I say seller financing, what I'm usually talking about is not subject to, which is where you're kind of
Mm-hmm.
paying the payments on someone's existing mortgage, and you're not assuming any debt or anything like that. I'm just talking traditionally when someone does not have any debt on the property, and you just say, hey, rather than me getting a loan from a bank, uh, I'll pay a down payment and then get a loan for the bank, and then you'll get the full sale amount. You're going to become my bank. Maybe I give you a down payment,
Mm-hmm.
maybe I don't, and then you are the bank, and you and I can negotiate whatever terms we want for that loan to look like. So really, there's 4 or 5 different levers when I explain it that you can pull with seller financing, and they all like if it goes in one direction for a seller, it's probably going further away from what the buyer would want. But you can kind of adjust those levers as you want. And an obvious one is purchase price, right? Seller's going to want a higher purchase price. Buyer's going to want a lower purchase price. And then you have down payment, you have interest rate, you have the amortization. How long is the loan amortized over? And then you have the actual like term or the balloon, like when is it due? Um,
Mm.
and what I've said is, hey, tell me. I explained kind of all of those terms, and there's more than that probably, but those are the big ones. I said, what of these are important to you? What's the most important to you? Help me understand, Mr. Seller, Mrs. Seller, like what you want from these, and then maybe I can pull the levers on the other terms to work in my favor, and we can find a good win-win. So yeah, it was just kind of that conversation with her. And as far as
Mm-hmm.
structuring it, it was a simple. I talked to some closing companies, like closing attorneys, that would do the title work and things like that. And they said, yeah, we can draw up the contract. You pretty much just. I think it was actually just over email. We sent them the email that we both agreed to over email, like me and the seller, to the title company, and they put it up in a contract and said, if this captures what y'all are trying to capture, then both of you sign here, and that's what we did.
Wow.
And then it's as simple. At least it's a little bit different state by state, but for seller financing for a transaction, uh, it's 2 papers. There's 2 documents. It's a promissory note, which is lays out the terms that I'll pay the loan back at, and then there's a deed of trust. And what the deed of trust does is it ties that property to the promissory note essentially. So if I violated as the buyer, if I violated the terms of that loan, the seller has recourse to take the property back in a pretty straightforward way through the closing attorney that we used.
Yeah. Nice. That's great. And you don't have to overcomplicate it. And did you give her a little bit above like market value or what you would have paid had it been non seller finance?
I In other cases I have. On this one, it was very simple and straightforward. She named her purchase price. She told me her
Okay.
purchase price, which it sounds like a pretty low number, and it was, but it was 105,000. It needed some work, but it was 105,000. And she was happy with that because she had paid much less than that
Yeah.
years prior, many years prior.
Wow.
And she said, hey, if I can get this, and if my she cared about purchase price and she cared about monthly payment,
Hmm.
like the total amount. And it came out to 2 things that she was happy with. And I said, hey, I would like to put as little down as possible. Um, and I would also like to extend the loan over 30 years at a fixed interest rate, where I don't have to pay
Hmm.
you off a balloon at 5 or 10 years or something like that. And she agreed to those terms.
Wow.
So yeah,
That's great.
that's how the unicorn deal worked out, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, but it's still a win-win for someone in that situation who, it sounds like she's a little bit older and she's looking for an annuity. She's looking for income. She doesn't want to worry about, repairing this property anymore. Just wants the income, and it made sense to her, and it makes sense for you, gives you the ability to do more deals. I appreciate that breakdown because a lot of people wonder about seller finance, and
sure. And
that's a
if I
really good
could say,
explanation.
Kirby, one of the things I didn't mean to interrupt you, but one of the things is
No.
I feel like, and I know this, that she felt like she could trust the person that she was working with,
Mm,
and she didn't feel unsure about what am I getting into. Is he going to
Yeah.
pay me? And it's been 4 or 5 years at this point. She's collected a payment every month on the first of the month. So I believe that she probably looks at it as, hey, I got what I wanted out of this, and I feel very certain about, he did what he said he was going to do, and she's been very kind to write me multiple referrals to other sellers for deals that I've done, saying, hey, this is what he said he was going to do. This is what he did. I would do it again if I had the chance, and that's helped me a
Awesome.
lot.
That's great. That's great. Win-win all the way
Yeah.
around. And I know so you did some other seller finance deals from there, and you mentioned that you've even refinanced a seller finance deal where it's. Can you kind of explain how that? I've never heard of somebody refinancing a seller finance deal,
Yeah.
but what did that look like?
I have not heard of that either. And it I was reading a book that it was focused on seller financing. It was like a Kindle book for, I'm sorry, I wish I could even tell you what it was. Or no, I'm sorry, it was 100 Deals as a Land Flipper. Just
Okay.
a book that nobody's probably ever heard of. But he just kind of listed a strategy with how he did a certain transaction. And it made me realize, like, wow, anything a bank can do, technically an individual, if they had the funds, could do as well. I don't know. So it was another deal where I purchased 10 properties from an individual using seller financing. And it was very small down payments. I think it was about 1% down payments, which was incredible for me. And it was a favorable interest rate, and it was spread, or it was a 3% interest rate, 30-year fixed. Bought these 10 properties, which was a huge move for us when we did it. And each of them, they took some work, so we invested a lot of money into them. But they became great cash flowing properties, and we built a great relationship with that seller. Very similar story to the first, where before the transaction happened, we had connected and spent a lot of time together. Actually, his two sons were West Point grads as well, which did not hurt as far as kind of having things in
Building
common
some
goes.
rapport. Yeah.
And I met them as well, because I was like, well, why don't your sons take these properties? As a gentleman that had gotten in the rental business, had all his properties paid off, and was just kind of ready to be out of it. And he just said they're in the stock market and crypto, and they just don't really want to deal with tennis and toilets, and I don't blame them.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so sorry if I'm getting too in the weeds there, but
No,
yeah,
not at
I
all.
purchased all these properties from him. We maintained a good relationship. We ate at Waffle House once a month after we bought the properties, and I showed him pictures of, hey, here's the renovation we did on property 1, and here's how the tenant's doing in property 6, and things like that. It just had a great relationship. As the years went on, Fayetteville, which I believe just to be a cash flowing market, but not necessarily an appreciating market, actually experienced some good amount of appreciation, as did a lot of places, and the craziness of the last 5 years or so.
Mm-hmm.
And I found myself with a lot of equity in these properties, these 10 properties. And the gentleman that had sold the properties, obviously, if you're able to sell 10 properties and don't need the cash from those sales up front, that's why he was able to do seller financing. Then you may be of means. You may have the ability to entertain some creative ideas. So I went to him and I said, hey, I'm paying you 3% interest on these properties. Here's how much these properties have appreciated, and we've put a lot of money into them ourselves to help get them there. And interest rates have since gone up a lot higher. So you could probably be making more money in a CD right now than what I'm paying you. Do you have the ability to lend me more money against these properties? It'd still be secured by these properties. To lend me more money, essentially, it would be like a cash out refinance that you'd be funding. And in exchange, I'm going to increase the interest rate, not just on that new money, but on the entire loan balance for all the properties from 3% up to 5% is what I said. He came back at 6%, and that's what we agreed on. So it increased my monthly payment to him significantly. But he actually allowed me to pull out $250,000 amongst those 10 properties, which really helped me as far as future projects and other down payments and things like that went. So yeah, that's how it worked, and he was very happy about it because it improved his situation, and apparently he had the money to put into it for that, and I was obviously very happy about it because I believe that I can do things with that money that are going to earn more than 6%. So
Hmm.
yeah, that's how it worked out.